get your systems in order for your workflow. Have a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be sexy. You don't have to spend a ton of money on a big CRM and all this stuff. I literally use a Google Sheets document to tell me what I have on the go, what's coming up, how much money it's making me. It's just like a very simple, basic spreadsheet.
Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Raymond Hatfield, and today we are chatting with wedding photographer Lindsay Coulter about what's essential when learning photography and starting a business. But first, did you know that 70% of people abandon their online shopping carts before checking out? If you're trying to sell prints, that is a lot of money that you could be leaving on the table. Well, worry no more. With CloudSpot's abandoned cart email feature, your clients can be automatically reminded to finish their purchase without you lifting a single finger. Grab your free CloudSpot account today over at deliverphotos.com. Now, this episode is for those of you feeling overwhelmed by all of the should-dos in photography. You know what I'm talking about. You watch like 5 or 6 YouTube videos about the business of photography, and immediately you feel so behind, right? There's so many different things that you're being told what to do. Do you do it all? Do you pick and choose? How do you know what to pick? Well, today's guest, Lindsay Coulter, who's been shooting weddings for more than 10 years, is going to share with you all of the mistakes that she made, not only when learning photography, but also when starting and growing her photography business, as well as what she's cutting out and what she's going deeper with as her business continues to mature. So in today's episode, you're going to learn the importance of creating a workflow from shutter snap all the way to delivery, why delivering an exceptional client experience is far more important than the gear that you use, and to a degree, even the quality of the images that you deliver, and why we need to take care of ourselves and maintain our own mental and physical health, not in addition to, but because we oftentimes have such a busy schedule. You know, and remember, listening to the podcast should not be a passive experience. You're listening right now to become a better photographer. So listen actively, take notes on your phone of the things that you hear and take action. That's the only way that you're going to get better. So with that, let's go ahead and get on into today's interview with Lindsay Coulter. Lindsay, when did you know that photography was going to first play an important role in your life?
I probably first knew that it was going to be important in my life in 2012. I was 22 years old and in university for environment and geography, something totally unrelated to where I am now. And a guy named Taylor Jackson slid into my DMs. And they didn't call it that then. I just thought the guy was being weird on Facebook. And I had followed his blog for a really long time. For those of you who don't know, Taylor Jackson is my husband now, but at that time was just a guy in my town that took photos. And I followed his wedding blog just because I was a 20-something-year-old girl in his town. And so I knew who he was. We ended up going on a date against my better judgment because who goes on a date with some random guy from social media? But I did.
Oh, me.
And
And I'll tell you a story about that afterwards. But yeah,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
especially around that time, that was more normal
It
than
was
it
like a
is now. Yeah.
thing, right? It was like people used social media as like a dating app. It was so funny. And it started on Twitter because I responded to a tweet of his about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then he like went and looked me up on Facebook and was like, we have a lot of mutual friends in common. I was like, is this a pickup? So yeah, we hung out. We went on a couple of dates and really quickly he basically said, I'm busy every single weekend with weddings. So if you want to hang out anymore, you're going to have to pick up a camera and be my second
No
photographer.
way.
So I think we started dating in May, and June, July, August, September, I literally learned how to be a photographer. I learned on the first few weddings at weddings that like didn't have a second photographer hired, not to make him sound like the worst photographer to hire. But pretty quickly, I wasn't sure if it was going to be my career, but I was like, oh, this is going to be a part of my life here because there was no ease in with Taylor and I. We were just full on. Like, we were serious right away. So I was like, well, whatever this is, I guess it's going to be a thing in my life in some capacity. I don't think I could have expected my own career to be what it is now in those days, though.
Help me figure out the wrapping your head around the decision to say, I know that I'm in school to learn this, but actually, I'm going to forget all about that and
Yeah.
choose this career path going forward.
Yeah, it wasn't easy at all. It came with a lot of stress, and it actually came with a lot of like complications because my parents both worked at the university that I was going to. So there was no hiding that I was not going to be using my degree. Like they were very aware of what was happening. It was pretty gradual at first. I was working at a restaurant, I was teaching piano, I was teaching yoga. I was also in school full time. So I was busy. Like I was just a busy person. I liked being busy and I liked running my own businesses in the teaching piano and yoga. And I had a co-op job working at a hydro company for one of my school terms. So instead of going to classes, I went and worked at a hydro company. As you can imagine, you're not really like a popular person working in conservation management, like energy conservation at a hydro company, because the only reason that they get paid is because people consume energy. So I realized really quickly, like, oh, this thing I went to school for is going to be hard. And it's not going to allow me the flexibility that every 20 something year old dreams of, like being able to travel and run their own. Even if you're an employee, you always hope that you're going to have some autonomy. And I realized that that's not the career path I have chosen here at all. And at the same time, there's this parallel where I'm going and shooting weddings with Taylor, and he just has like a really nice life. He's traveling all the time. He's literally hanging out with people on the best day of their lives over and over again, and he's getting to create stuff. And I'd always been in the creative space. I went to a special arts school for high school. So I'd always been like in the arts, but just in my experience and what everybody had always told me, that wasn't a career path. That was like a thing that you do for fun, that and you have a real job. So it took me a really long time to wrap my head around like not having the comfort of a steady income, and coming from two parents that worked at a university, like all I had ever known was like a normal life.
Yeah, a 9 to 5 job and yeah, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad had his own small business when I was younger, and it was hard. It was always feast and famine. And so I knew I didn't want that. So when I decided to sort of dip a toe into starting my own business, it was really like, well, I'll do this while I still finish my degree, so that I knew that there was still an option there for me to get a job if this didn't end up working out. But for me, I just was like, well, if there's ever going to be a time when I'm going to really give this the old college try, it's when I have no responsibilities whatsoever. Like my apartment costs $333 a month. I was making that just in tips at the bar that I worked at. So there was really no risk for me in starting a business. So I just kind of whipped together a website and saw what happened. And it just all fell into place really organically,
Hmm.
and it's not natural. I know it's really abnormal. And I hope that like the newer photographers listening don't think like, yeah, you can just decide to not have a full-time career, a job, and you can just be a photographer in your first year. Because that's what happened for me. And I was like shooting 30 weddings a year in my first year and then 50 the
Wow.
next year. It's like really abnormal. But I had a
Yes.
referral source from my boyfriend,
Yeah.
who was a really well-established photographer. So I always tell people like, you can't look at somebody else's journey and hope that that could be yours or wonder why it's not yours. It all sort of happens in sequence exactly how it's supposed to for each person. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was as organic as I guess I could have hoped it to be. It wasn't like one day I had to quit a job. I graduated from university and I remember feeling this like relief, like, oh my God, I just get to do photography now, because I had been doing so many things and on top of this full time schooling, that I was like, well, this is a relief now that I just get to do this and like just get to do this. I mean, I was doing a lot. I was doing all of the things and trying to figure out what worked for me, basically.
Yeah. You don't book 30 and then 50 weddings and not have much to do. There's a lot that goes on, obviously, behind the scenes more than just those weekends.
And I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like workflow wise, nothing. I was
Yeah.
like, you might think because I had this well established photographer in our home that that would mean that I had all the best workflows and all of that. But I actually totally disagreed with most of the ways how Taylor ran his business, aside
Oh,
from like he
funny.
was a really good photographer. So I didn't want to just say, okay, I'll do that or I'll do that. Like we run our businesses very differently. So I was doing it all from scratch, but it was almost worse because I was seeing how he was doing it, trying it that way, and then realizing that's not for me. Instead of just like, I don't know what normal people do. They just research
Yeah.
and they get software and they just hope for the best. I don't know.
Yeah. I've never been a wedding photographer before, so I don't know what to do here. Yeah, in all these weird
Yeah.
situations. Yeah.
I'd never even
Yeah.
been to a wedding. I'd been to one wedding before.
Oh, really? That's
Like
funny.
I'd never even been to one, so I didn't even know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's rewind a little bit. And I want to know what it was like just being handed a camera at a wedding. Like when
Yeah.
when you hadn't been to a wedding before, like what was that learning curve for you? How did you learn photography? What was the most difficult part? And how did you get over it? That was a big question. I apologize.
No, that's okay. It's a really good question because I all the way through learning how to be a photographer and how to run a business, I always remembered thinking, you have to remember this because at some point you're going to know all of this stuff. And somebody's going to ask you basically this question, and you're not going to remember because that's how it goes. I would ask all these experienced photographers, like Taylor included, other people that I knew, and they just wouldn't know. They'd be like, I would ask them, how did you get started? Or what should I know? Because you don't know what you don't know, really,
Yeah.
right? You're in it and you don't know why your work sucks in comparison to what you're seeing. It just does. And I remember thinking, like, we have to remember self, we have to remember how hard this was. So one of the first things that I did was I shot on aperture priority. That was like easy mode essentially. Instead of having to know like the triangle of ISO, shutter, like everything to understand all of it, it took some of the guesswork out of it for me, right? It was doing some of it automatically, which allowed me to focus on composition and on like the human experience. So the first few weddings I did with Taylor, I just walked up to people and tried to be like a normal human, which I think helped that I had been teaching yoga and teaching piano because the human thing was really all I knew and working at a bar. So I was like, okay, I'll lean on that side of things. But my skill set was so far behind. I knew when pictures looked good, but I had no idea why. I
Mm.
knew what kind of images I liked to create, but I had no idea how I had made them and I couldn't figure out how to make them again. So aperture priority saved me in those early days, just getting me comfortable with having a DSLR in my hands because that was not a thing. And then my next thing that was really hard for me was always trying to figure out what lens I was supposed to put on it. Because when I was second shooting for Taylor, the decision was made for me. He handed me a camera with a lens on it. But then the next year when I was shooting for myself, I was like, I have to make these decisions. Like that's a lot. Like how am I supposed to know which lens to use in what moment?
And it's so much more than like, I think a lot of new photographers think, oh, if something's far away, I'll just use a telephoto. If something's close up, I'll use a wide angle lens. But
Right.
there's so much more, as you found, that goes into it than just, am I using a telephoto lens because it's far away or
Yes.
not? So is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, and because I didn't understand why I liked certain looks of photos, I didn't understand, oh, it's because it has a really shallow depth of field.
Mm.
I didn't understand that certain lenses flare in different ways than others. I didn't understand really what I didn't realize was that I really liked prime lenses because when I first started, I just shot on a 24 to 70 because that's like a pretty safe lens.
Yeah.
If I have a new second start for me and they are newer to photography, well, they're not usually a second if they're newer, but if I have somebody working for me that's newer into it, I'll put them on a 24 to 70 and say, like, have at her. Get comfortable with this before we go anywhere else. The other option would be to put them on a 50 and say, you're going to zoom with your legs.
Yeah.
But what really helped me in those early days was removing some of the options. Because I was working at so many jobs, I actually had a really big kit. I was buying used gear from Taylor. I was buying used gear from our local shop. So I had like a really big size kit. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Like, I think having less allows you to understand that lens and what it looks like and how it works really, really well and the limitations of it. And then you move on to the next one. Like, so start with the 50 1.8. Start with like the cheapest lens in your bag and just get really good at shooting families and babies and weddings if you dare, and get really good at doing that on one lens. I actually shot almost an entire season on the Sigma Art 51.4,
Oh, how cool.
just because I just loved it. I was
Yeah.
like, well, giving yourself like a little bit of a limitation actually sometimes is helpful to your learning experience and just I think the overall client experience because you're not fumbling with lenses and caps and you're not the person that looks confused and scared.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I feel almost the exact same way about shooting primes. It's that suddenly I'm not always guessing myself as far as, well, should I go wide for this? Should I,
Yeah.
zoom in for this? Because again, it's more than just how far away is the subject that
Yeah.
determines what your focal length should be. And I found that if I had the 35 on, well, I'm going to make it work. If I have the 85 on, I'm going to make whatever I, want
Hmm.
work, and that's all that you can do, right? You have to be creative because of the constraints that you're given. So if you can artificially give yourself those constraints, that's like a, I don't know, a photo hack, I guess, that you can
Yeah.
get to becoming more creative. So that's great.
And there are people that will tell you, like, you could just ask somebody, what are the lenses I should use for different parts of the day? I've done some
Sure.
BTS of my wedding days where I just say, like, I usually try to walk into a wedding ceremony with, or a wedding day to getting ready with something really simple, like a 35 or a 50 on, because I don't want the people's first reaction to be like, oh, wow, the photographer is here. Because I walk in with like a 70-200 or even a 24-70, it looks really intimidating, right? So there are really like now, and I've been doing this for over 10 years, like there are some logistical reasons why I do that that actually don't have anything to do with like the outcome of the image necessarily, so much as like the feeling when I walk in a room. And so watching BTS of other people, and like I'm been talking about weddings, I do all different kinds of shoots. I do families and babies and branding and stuff, but listening to other photographers that are experienced in their field about the types of lenses they recommend for certain types of day, maybe that's the helpful thing for some photographers, like just actually following a worksheet or something that other people have suggested.
Yeah. That right there is the whole reason why I created the podcast. I've shared this on the podcast before. I went to school for cinematography, not
Okay.
photography. So even though there's a lot of similarities, once I started to get into weddings, I felt like a bit of a fraud, right? Like, am I forgetting something? Am I not doing something right? And just
Yeah.
being able to have a podcast here to be able to reach out to photographers and just find out, like, what are you doing and
Yeah.
why is extremely helpful.
And sometimes just like a little bit of confirmation of like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're on the right track. Like
Hmm.
that's totally normal. And I mean, this many years in, I still have friends that we do things so differently from each other that like this is the hill we'll die on, like that's
Yeah.
not right. You shouldn't do that. But like how do we know? Even if
Yeah.
you went to photography school, every educator is going to teach a different way of doing things. Like that is where it's an art and not just, there is no exact way to do it.
Right. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that is where it's the art. It's the personal decisions that you're making. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk real quick about a conversation that we had at Imaging USA this year, which was you were telling me that one thing that you're working on is being more intentional in your business, going deeper rather than trying to do more things. Tell me about that. You've been doing this for 10 plus years. So what does that look like? What sorts of changes are you looking to make in your business and why is this coming about?
Yeah. I loved our chat at Imaging. It was like so brief. We were just hanging out at the Imagine table, but I was like, oh, you are a born interviewer. That's a great question. I mean, 10 plus years is a really long time to be in business. I'll say that. It comes with constant learning, constant. There's never a time when I'm not learning and I'm not trying something new. And that can be exhausting. And if you are in the photography space, if you're wanting to be a photographer, you're probably aware that it's like constantly changing also. Social media is changing, marketing is changing, SEO changes. Google removed 100 reviews from my Google listing yesterday. So that's a thing I have to react to. COVID existed and I had to react to like
Yeah.
a completely different way of doing things. AI started. We were like, oh, I guess we'll edit with AI. I switched to mirrorless. Now I'm switching from Canon back to Nikon. It's like one thing after another that never really truly ends. And there are still some constants in it, regardless of what like the ebbs and flows of what is happening around me and around my business that I have to react to. And one of those constants is that I always want my clients' experience to be exceptional. And that was always a thing in my early days that I wanted my clients to feel like, wow, what a great customer service experience that we had with Lindsay. And anybody who says that photography is just an art is missing something so huge, because photography is a service industry. We are only in existence because people hire us. That's it. And the second we stop serving our clients and wanting to know what is it that you are looking for, that's when we've completely lost the plot. So I have absolutely lost the plot over the years, right? There have been times where I have focused on the wrong things. I have been chasing numbers on Instagram. I have been worried about what the trends are because I hired a 22-year-old assistant and I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's going to eat my lunch and all these young girls are going to come in and take my business. And then I got in that scarcity mindset, and that really killed things for me for a period of time. And like, if I come back to the reality of my business is good, my business is strong, I create really good work for my clients, what do I want to do more of? The thing that I realized that I want to do more of is just doing really, really good work for my clients. And that sort of, I talk about this a little bit because I have a course where I teach sort of mindset and skill set, because it's a thing I think that all photographers, those two things, has these like large pillars, make up a really successful business. But if your mindset is bad, but your skill set is good, it will fail. There's so many talented photographers out there that get bogged down in comparison on social media and worrying about gear when gear is just not the most important thing. It's obviously important, but it's not the only thing. They're worried about what's trendy and what's cool. And then they forget, like, what's your value? Why are you doing this? And so for me, like, my sort of core values are like, I want to have fun. I want my business to be fun. And I know that that's like a luxury that we have, but it is a luxury we have. Your business can be fun, like, it can be
Yeah.
enjoyable.
You get to choose your hard. Yeah.
Of course. Of course. Like, it can be enjoyable. It doesn't have to suck. I know that it
Yeah.
does suck sometimes, but it doesn't have to. I want to be profitable and sustainable, like not just profitable for peaks and valleys. Like, I want it to be profitable year over year in a way that makes sense for me and for my clients. And I want to create good work. And I think with those sort of values in mind, and every year I try to like reset and think, what do I want to do differently or the same this year? The thing that keeps coming up for me is, you know, I have taken time aside to like do more educating and to work with brands and to do public speaking. And that's all great. That's awesome. But that doesn't feed my values, which is I want to create good work for my clients. I want to be profitable. I want to have fun. Like, it's not feeding into all three of those categories. Sometimes it's one or the other, but it's never all three of those. But like, the thing that I can control is like this thing that I actually built here year over year. And like, if it survived COVID, it can survive anything. That's how I truly
Yeah.
feel. Like, especially in Canada, we were locked down for so long.
Oh.
So, yeah, this year I'm kind of just coming back to like, if I was a client hiring me, what would my experience be like? And I just want to know. Like, I want to workshop it again. I want to almost become a beginner photographer again. Like, instead of just doing things the way I've always done them, I'm like, oh, this works. This is good, which has never really been my MO. Like, I'm not the latest adopter of all time, but like, I was slow to join into AI editing, or I was slow to switch over to mirrorless. And if I had jumped onto those things sooner, I think it would have been a better experience for my clients. But you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But for me, I'm kind of just looking at everything from the first person to never hear of me to think, I want to do wedding photos and I need a wedding photographer. Like, what's that experience look like for somebody searching me out, finding a website, getting hit with a contact form? They have to fill that out, going back and forth on pricing. Like, what's that whole experience feel like? And then what does it feel like being on the other side of the camera for your engagement photos and feeling nervous and anxious? Like, do they feel prepared? Do they feel well taken care of? Do they feel like they look great and they know it? Or do they feel like uncomfortable and like I haven't prepared them? So
Mm.
I kind of just want to go through and figure out where the holes are in my business, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Because it's all been so organic, right? It's just been like I built this thing literally brick by brick, and I'm just like, well, where are their holes?
Yeah, yeah. There is this question that I try to tackle every year in some sort of year-end review, which is, when I think about my business, what feels broken? And when you can answer that, because I think we can get so wrapped up in busyness, right? Well, if I'm working on SEO or whatever, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, but it may not be the right thing, right?
Yeah.
So asking yourself what feels broken is kind of one of the similar things that I do. But how do you plan on figuring that out? Let's just focus on the client experience part of it right now. Is it just surveying your clients? Is it you going through working with another photographer, like hiring them and seeing what they're doing? How do you plan to go deeper into client experience this year?
So there's a couple things that I'm doing currently and planning on doing more of. One of the things that I really want to do is I try to do it every year. I don't know that I did it last year, and it got hard during COVID because
Everything got hard during COVID.
yeah, everything got hard during COVID, but I try to audit my calendar, figure out where I've been spending time. And I literally just go through month by month and I look at my calendar, and I don't delete anything off my calendar ever. And I actually have calendars going back to like 2011 on Google. So I go through month by month and I look at appointments, where I was spending time in phone calls, where wasn't I spending time on client calls, what months felt hard, and then trying to correlate why they felt hard. So I feel like, as unsexy as that is, like doing an audit of your own calendar, because our calendars, they shouldn't rule us, but like they do kind of run the show, right? So
Yeah.
in knowing where we spent our time, it's a pretty good indicator of how we ran our business.
So let me ask you real quick, just that
Sure.
I can get some clarity. When it comes to your calendar, are you putting in things like, are you blocking off time for certain tasks, or is your
So I
calendar
don't
just the
do that.
appointments? Okay.
Yeah, I don't do that. That would make it like, wow, the audit would be
Yeah.
so effective if I did that. No, I have like, it's fairly general. So it'll be like travel, it's sessions, it's weddings, it's any client calls that I take, any type of like podcast or interview or anything else like that's, I'll call it an extracurricular that I do that's fun. I've got family time in there. In auditing my calendar, it's actually how I realized that I wanted to take long weekends off. In Canada, we're blessed. We have a lot of long weekends. And I would say there's like one every month starting in April. Maybe even,
So you
yeah.
just don't book weddings during these long weekends?
Yes, because
Love
what I
it.
was doing,
Booking 3 weddings instead of
yes,
none.
I would
Yeah.
book 3 because I was like, well, if I'm going to shoot this thing up, I'm going to do the whole thing, which is how you end up with 50 or 60 weddings in a year, by
Yeah.
the way. Like, you're
And
like,
burnt out.
how? That's crazy. Because I would do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday on a long weekend, and it was
Woo.
brutal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. I don't care how much money you're making, that's not fun. And the thing that I realized was like, my business was supposed to give me freedom, and now I'm losing time. My family owns a cottage on Georgian Bay. It's beautiful. My aunt and uncle have had a cottage for since before I was born. So the cottage has always been like a place. And Americans don't really do like the cottage, I guess, right? It's like a
No,
lake
not
house.
really. Yeah.
But in Canada, like a cottage, it's a privilege. I will not lie. It's not mine. It is my privilege that I get to go there. It's not my cottage. But it was a huge eye opener for me when I was looking at my calendar, and I was like, was that worth it? Like, my cousins are getting older. There's only so many years when they're going to think that I'm cool and they want to hang out with me. And they don't think I'm cool, for the record, but they will go paddleboarding with me still. And
Yeah.
I think that's a win, you know? And they'll play Scrabble with me on the dock. And I remember like their mom doing the same thing with me when I was a kid, and how much that impacted my life. And to think that they don't have that because it's just like their parents and their grandparents up at the cottage, and they don't have this like other relative there
In
every long
between
weekend.
ages. Yeah. Long
Yeah,
weekends.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want that. Like, I want that for them. I want that for me. I want that for our whole family. I want us to spend time together. And I would always tell myself, I'll go up to the cottage through the week when I have time. But I didn't go to the cottage for 5 years.
Yeah.
Literally, when I started my business for 5 full years, I didn't go to the cottage one time. And that was unheard of in my family. My family was like, this can't be good. We understand you're in a building phase, but like, you got to get up north. And I realized like there's a part of me that's missing. And that's the part of me that likes to, be wild and go camping and get outside and spend time in nature. And all I'm doing is like clickety clacking on this computer all day, driving myself into the ground, making a
Yeah.
bunch of money. But
Yeah.
for what?
For
Literally
what?
for what? I'm spending it like crazy because I'm miserable. There's no plan here. So this is a really long-winded answer of doing that audit really can help in really big ways, and it makes you realize like what's like truly missing. And in me figuring out what's missing on my side of things, we'll likely figure out what's missing for my clients, right? Because if I'm not loving it, there's no way that they're loving it. There's just no way. And I don't care. Like, I worked my butt off those weekends, but the Sunday or the Monday wedding, whatever it was on the third wedding, is always getting a lesser version of me because it's just not possible for
Of
me to be
course.
going at 100% 8 to 12-hour wedding days in a row plus travel. That's not possible.
Yeah. Okay, help explain this because I've talked to newer photographers before, and because I've always had a rule that I won't do three weddings because I did three weddings in a row once, and I was just as you found. I'm giving my a much lesser version of myself, and their
Yeah.
argument is you had 3 8-hour days. Like, oh, that sucks to be you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I go to work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. But
Mm.
there's a different mental mode I think that you're in when you're tasked to create something for a couple. How would you explain that to them, right? Because it
Yeah.
can be a difficult conversation, but we're not comparing apples to apples here.
No, it's definitely not the same. I've had an 8-hour day in an office. I'm acutely aware that that is not the
Yeah.
same kind of day that we're having when we are doing the emotional labor of trying to make a bride feel like they're the most beautiful they've ever looked and trying to soften weird family stuff that's going on in the other room. And you're trying to like manage people's expectations around, no, we can't do an individual photo of the mother-in-law with every single person at this wedding individually on her own. No, that's not going to happen today. You're probably managing a second photographer while you're probably talking so much throughout a wedding day, trying to direct people and give them information and tell them what's coming next and what to expect, and then posing them and being creative. Creativity does not happen when you're burnt out. That is a thing I know
Yeah.
100% for sure. I can have poses that I'm like, yep, I could do this like the back of my hand. I know the location I'm going to go. I shoot at this venue all the time. It's not a big deal. There are situations where I will do multiple weddings if one of the weddings is a shorter day, or if one of those weddings is at a venue that I'm really comfortable being at and I know like it's going to be super easy for me and I know that. I will say I think that when I was 23 years old starting this, doing
It's
a
a lot
triple
easier. Yeah.
physically was easier for me, right? Like I didn't get that. Like I would get a wedding hangover for sure. But like this is insane. I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but like I would go out to the bar on a Friday night after my Friday wedding and
Oh,
then
wow.
go and shoot a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, because I was a kid, I was an
Wild woman.
idiot.
Yeah.
And I was making more money than I had ever seen before, right? So, like, if I don't have a peppermint tea now by 9 p.m. the night before a wedding, I'm going to regret it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. Useless the next day. Yeah.
yeah, and not to like make it sound like, oh, I'm 34, not to make it sound like, oh, like when you turn 30, it all changes. But truly, like some things change and your priorities do change. And
Yeah.
my willingness to accept feeling physically crappy on a wedding day has very much changed. I have no tolerance for feeling physically bad. So that's why I personally will not do 3 weddings on a weekend anymore unless it's like I've got 2 weddings booked and the third one is like a best friend and she's like, you
Sure.
absolutely must shoot my wedding.
Yeah.
There's always an extenuating circumstance that will come around, but I just don't feel like we're doing our best work physically, mentally, emotionally, and definitely not creatively when we're doing that kind of work back to back.
Yeah, I just heard this recently. I don't remember his name, but like there's some world-class chess player or something. And scientists hooked him up to a bunch of probes or whatever and found that in like a 5-hour game of chess that he would play, his brain was so locked in and he would expel, I don't know, use, I don't know what the right term is, 5,000 calories, like just in that time, in that like 4 or 5 hour span, because his brain is so locked in.
Yeah.
And it's like when I brought it back to weddings at that moment, I was like, yeah, that's why the next day I'm like, nobody can talk to me today.
And why people do feel physically bad too,
Yeah.
right? Like they do feel physically bad because the other thing I used to do is I just used to drink a like giant black coffee in the morning. I would eat a bagel from Tim Hortons on my way to the wedding, and then I wouldn't eat again until dinner. And the
Yeah.
first thing that would come would be bread, and I would eat bread. And then I'm a vegetarian. And so the first thing would be pasta. And then I'm just spiking and crashing all day long. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, why does my head hurt?
Yeah,
Why do I feel
exactly.
so bad? And then my workflow would suck because the next 2 days after that wedding, I was useless. Whereas now I am still not perfect. There is no perfect way, I don't think, to efficiently fuel yourself on a wedding day. It's unfortunately some things are probably going to give, but like I do try to get like a protein shake or something into me in the morning at home, and then I bring some healthy-ish thing to eat while I'm either
Yeah.
in the car, moving from location to location or something. And then I did actually start eating fish again because specifically wedding meals was always pasta. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is not a thing that I can eat multiple times a week without feeling it. But I think trying to figure out how we fuel ourselves it's an important factor for sure in the whole space. But yeah, when I was younger, I didn't have any idea. But now when I'm doing that, the next day after a wedding, I could get up and I could go for a walk. I can then start culling the wedding if I haven't culled it already the night before. Like I have energy still. There isn't this crash. And it is nice over here. I will say, for those of you who are still on the Red Bull diet, like join us. It's nice to drink water and not feel crappy the day after a wedding. I'm
Yeah,
still on
no,
a Red Bull diet. I'm not going to lie to you. Like
it's so hard to kick. I
I drink
know.
way too much. We have a Red Bull fridge in our studio,
Are you
actually.
kidding? That's
Yeah,
like
I
my
know.
dream. That is so awesome. And I see so
Well,
many of them on Facebook Marketplace. I don't
the
know
Red
if,
Bull.
yeah, the mini Red Bull fridges. Like, I don't know if they're like promotional things that the distributors give to gas
So
stations or whatever, but
bars and
I want
stuff.
one.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
how we got
bars.
ours because a friend of ours manages a bar up the street from our studio.
Yeah.
And they just get a bunch of them because they push a lot of Red Bull. And so he just asked the guy, "Hey, like our friends have an office, can we have an extra one?" And they said yes.
I'm so jealous. I'm
Yeah,
so
so we have a
jealous.
Red Bull fridge. It's always well stocked. So if you come to visit us in Waterloo, you can join.
I'm gonna have to grab a Red Bull, yeah, for sure. One of the things that I've been trying to do lately, and this isn't exactly photography related, but is to cut my caffeine, to not have any caffeine past like 11 a.m. Because one
Oh,
of the things that
interesting.
I found was that when I sit in front of a computer and I'm editing and or you're working on your website or you're doing all these things, especially in these winter months, you want something
Yeah.
warm. So you're gonna drink, I would go through like a pot of coffee a day, you
Yes, and
know?
then you're trying to figure out why your anxiety is so bad.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I'm like, why is my
Exactly.
heart racing? Is this the
Yeah.
consequence of my own actions? It couldn't be. No, I totally, that's why I started drinking peppermint tea. Truthfully, like, I don't think we talk about this enough, and I will always be the first person to talk about it. Being a photographer and running a photography business allows us a lot of freedom. And the freedom to choose is really exciting, but the freedom to choose also, if we're not really conscious of our choices, can put you in a really bad physical and mental state, right? So, like, it wasn't uncommon for me to be like, oh, it's 4 o'clock. I'm going to have a glass of wine while I edit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think like the mummy coffee then wine culture that's all over social media. I'm not a mum, but I follow enough mum influencers that it's rampant. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. That it's totally normalized to go, what do they call it? From nine to wine or something like that. So so I mean, like from a reformed party girl who I just told you that I would go out to the bar after a wedding,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is terribly surprised that while I'm editing, I would be like, why wouldn't I have a glass of wine? Like, who's my boss?
We're adults. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who's going to tell me no? Yeah.
It started at 5, then it would go to 4. During the pandemic, all bets were off. There were no
Yeah.
good choices
Noon.
being made there,
Yeah.
right?
Eh.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever. And that comes with repercussions. It comes with, like, I don't care what you say. If you wake up in the morning with a headache, it's because you are hungover. Even
Yeah.
if you think, oh, I just had a couple glasses of wine with my friends. But you do that for 5 days in a row or 4 days in a row, or you just do it mindlessly while you're editing because you're in an editing hole. It's mindlessness, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think the overwhelm of the number of decisions that we have to make as photographers, because our businesses and our lives are so intertwined, there's not really a separation of church and state. I'm very fortunate that I have this studio. I share it with Taylor and our friend Tim, and it's a physical building outside of
Yeah.
our home. I can walk to it, which is really nice, but it's not in my house. I'm really unlikely to crack open a bottle of wine here. But if you work from home, it's a different space. You're in your home. So it's really easy to, whether it's caffeine intake or whether it's alcohol or whatever your little vice is that you think is harmless, it does catch up, right? And thankfully, I just am constantly analyzing different areas of my life. So it doesn't take too long for me to be like, this is not how I feel like doing this. This is not what I want to be doing. So I am still very much addicted to caffeine. Um, but my 4 p.m., sometimes 3 p.m. glasses of wine have ended. The other thing I'll say is it's also weird when you're a wedding photographer is that you lose your weekends. And when you're, lose your weekends. But when you're in your 20s, that was really hard for me to reconcile. I was like, well, I still want to be fun. I don't want to lose out on this time in my life. So I would say Monday and Tuesdays are my weekend. Well, Monday and Tuesday being my weekend, sometimes I would end up doing a shoot on Monday. So then that means Tuesday and Wednesday are my weekend. But I probably still had like a drink or something on the Monday. So it's just, it all becomes a little bit gray.
Yeah,
And
gray.
I'm not suggesting we all become sober. Obviously, if that's something that you need, that is absolutely what we should all do, or what you should do. But I think for me, it was just about being conscious of all the decisions that I'm making in my life, whether it's not moving my body enough, it's not going to the cottage with my family, I was drinking wine when I shouldn't have been drinking wine and drinking coffee when I shouldn't have been drinking coffee. Like, it's just, I think, I know that there are a lot of decisions for us to make, but don't let the decisions we have to make for our business overshadow the decisions that we make for our lives. Like, I think that's the big one. Is like,
Oh, wow.
if you're making these decisions for your business and that's the forefront, and I get the grind, it's addictive. It's like, oh, I did this amazing thing for my website. I got to do that again. I did this. That worked. I booked this. That worked. And we just get so hyper fixated on that there's a reason why you don't see a lot of 40-plus-year-old photographers. It's because they
Yeah.
burn out.
They burn
Because
out.
they're
Yeah.
so focused on the business that they forget to focus on the human life behind the business.
So much to think of there. Wow, Lindsay. So what this kind of reminds me of is that one of the things, I got out of weddings. Part of it was from burnout, for sure. I wasn't taking care of myself like I should have. But then I look at guys like Joe McNally, who have been doing it for decades. And it's so interesting because I feel like, now obviously I don't know any of his personal routines. I don't know how it's all set up, but I know that he has support and I know that he has a team. And
Yeah.
it seems to me from the outside looking in that he made a conscious effort to not burn out, but instead rust out. You know what I mean? Like, it takes
Oh,
longer
interesting. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
rust than it does to burn out. And that's why today he is his age and he's still going and giving these workshops around the world and he's teaching and he's still
Yeah.
happy. Still has so much energy to give. And I can only imagine that it comes from a lot of taking care of himself, that personal health.
Yeah. Focusing on the sustainability is huge for me because
Yeah.
I remember when I got into it, I thought, well, this will be for a while, not forever. But then I loved it. And I was like, well, how do I make it forever then? Because I don't want to have to give this up. I don't want to have to. If I choose to, that's one thing. But I don't want to have to. I don't want to be forced out because I burn out, because I took on more work than I could handle and I stopped delivering on time, or because I wasn't charging enough and so this wasn't sustainable. And sometimes you don't realize that until a couple years down the line that what we're charging is not sustainable, because if you're a photographer, you're probably not really great at bookkeeping and you're probably not really great at analyzing the data from those books, right? So we sometimes don't realize it until it's a couple of years down the line, and that's okay. Like, whenever you figure it out, that's all right. But I do remember it being a conscious decision of mine. Like, if I do this, it's going to be in a sustainable way. And I think the only way to do that is to really focus on the business as a whole, as a really holistic thing. And if you, as the CEO, founder, whatever you are of your business, are unwell, it's not going to be
going to turn out well.
sustainable.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No.
So then I know that we're running out of time, so this will probably be my last question for you, which is, what changes are you making to your offerings and to your pricing to make sure that not only is it profitably sustainable, but also mentally sustainable for you as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went from shooting 50 weddings a year in 2019. I had 50 weddings booked, 55, I think, booked for 2020.
Didn't happen.
And no, and it didn't happen in a big way. And I just remember thinking during that time, I never want to reschedule 55 weddings again because it's okay when the train is on the tracks and everything is going well. And in previous years, basically from 2013 until 2019, I'd had a good run. The worst I had ever had was one year I had 6 weddings canceled. That was not a good year. Like divorces, cheating, all kinds of, or separations, cheating, all kinds of things that were really bad that were out of my hands. That was abnormal. But that was the worst year that I'd ever had. Go to 2020 where I I actually did shoot about 10 weddings that year, which is it's truly crazy. Like it is unheard of in this area that I was able to eke out 10 weddings when we were in closures for so much of it. They were smaller, they were not the same thing. But it really brought me back to the remembering I want more time with my family. I want more time in nature because I mean, all I was doing was going for walks. And in order to do that, I need to take on less work. And so I started being really intentional about capping my wedding bookings at 30 weddings a year, which is still lots. Like it's still a healthy calendar on top
Yeah.
of a portrait business. But now I realize like, well, the easiest way for me to do that is to just charge more because I am still making the same number. I'm still making the same amount that I was when I was doing 50 plus weddings at 35. If the demand is there to shoot 50 plus weddings, the demand will be there whether your price is 5,000 or 6,500. You know what I mean? Like it's not that
Absolutely.
big of a difference for the client. If they want to work with you, they will work with you. Like that is a thing. And I know that I'm privileged in a position in my business to be able to do that. I don't recommend brand new photographers taking pricing advice from somebody that's 10 years in necessarily because what I charge, if you even try to model yourself after that, your business will probably not succeed unless you have a killer portfolio somehow to back that up. So I hope, obviously, listening to this with a grain of salt, but I increased my prices and it was terrifying, like absolutely terrifying. The first month I was like, crickets, this is it. I'm going to downgrade my pricing. I have all my pricing public. It's all on my website. I know it's like contentious for people, but I just have it all out there. I think in the industry that we're in, we want to make it as easy for people to know what they're getting into as possible. So that's why I think it's important not just to have a starting price, but to just put it there. Like I have no problem with it. There's no secret. I don't come up with different packages based on people's personality types or their venue or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
it's just, this is the
It is what
price.
it is. Yeah.
There may be a discount based on you working at one of my preferred venues. That's totally fair. But this is the price that it starts at. So this year moving forward, in sort of bringing that in even further and dialing that in even further, I actually am going to be increasing my prices again. It's been a couple of years. It's been a couple of years. I increased them during COVID. Then I increased them again in 2023, I think, end of 2023. So I'm currently still working on the pricing that I was offering in 2023, 2024. And life has gotten a lot more expensive since those years. And our businesses
It
have all
has.
gotten a lot more expensive. And one of the joys of this business is that I don't have to go to a boss and say, hey, can I have a 2% raise because of inflation? Like, I can just do that. And I have to do that actually in order for this year to be just as profitable, if not more, than last year. That's a necessity. It's not even necessarily like a thing I want to do. I don't need to be making more money. I just need to be making what feels like the same as last year. So the prices, unfortunately, are going to have to go up. It's just how things are. But I also say if the cost of grapes is $13 and, people are happily spending $50 on an Uber, then a family session should not be $300. Like
Yeah.
that is crazy. These things should be valued differently, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
and that then to answer your question in the part two is reminding people of why this matters. So in my marketing efforts, reminding people of why photography is still so important. The world feels heavy. It feels really hard for a lot of people. I totally understand that. Reminding them of what's good in life is really important. And year over year, we're going to look back at these photos and be like, yeah, that was a hard year. Or, yeah, that was a rough time for my family. or times were tight, but we still made the time to get together as a family and document like this joy that we have. Weddings are a different beast because those will still go off. It's really wild. I used to always say weddings are recession proof, but they're not pandemic proof. But I truly do believe that they are recession proof. People will spend whatever they had planned on spending for their wedding, regardless of what is going on in the world. And we create recessions. We create them by telling people that there are recessions and nobody's spending and the industry's screwed and weddings are down across the board. We're the ones creating that whole narrative, and then our clients buy it and then they stop spending as a whole, right? So we need to remind them, like, your wedding happens one time. It should not, what you choose to invest on it shouldn't be based on how the economy is doing at that time, within reason, obviously.
Of course,
Don't
yeah.
go mortgaging your house for it. But, I think if your venue and your photographer are the two most important things, then you should always still invest in those regardless of what those cost. So, yeah, kind of bringing that back to reminding my clients of that. And then the other thing, this is a really tangible thing that I'm going to be working on, is revamping all of my guides for my clients. So I have guides to help them pick their outfits for their engagement sessions and to show them locations that I typically shoot at, because a lot of my clients aren't from this area, but they'll come here for their engagement session. So showing them example photos of that and just updating those images so that they feel current, because people feel cared for when they open a guide that looks like it was made this year and not 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's wearing buffalo plaid. This is a thing. I am like looking back, I'm like, oh man, these photos are so 2015. Like, what's happening here? I want the editing style to be what I'm currently using, all of that. And then the other thing that I'm going to be doing, and I haven't announced this really anywhere, is that I'm going to be changing my delivery time to be much shorter.
Oh,
Because
really?
I think that I've been at the 4 to 6 week mark for wedding deliveries for a really long time. I don't think that's what my clients want anymore, and it doesn't need to be that anymore.
It doesn't need to be. That's right. Yeah.
Like, I use Imagine to edit my images. Truthfully, I could have their photos back to them within a week. I choose not to because I think that there is some value loss when they get them back instantly.
Yeah.
But doing a little bit more of a cull, that's the other thing that I have been really bad at. I've been over delivering images, like numbers of images, because it's just too easy to edit 1,500 photos now and deliver 1,500 photos. So tightening up that sort of the deliverable, both in timeline and what they're getting, that's one of the next big things. So to answer your question, I'm throwing the whole kitchen out and I'm just pulling back one thing and saying, let's start over.
No, that was incredibly insightful, and I appreciate all of that. I have a question about the delivery time, though, here, because this
Sure.
was one thing that I did in my business as well, is that I was relatively efficient, especially, as you know, when you shoot it right in camera, the edits can go by much quicker. So I would always promise 30 days. In fact, I had a guarantee that they'd get it within 30 days. Otherwise, I'd start to
Wow.
pay them back. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Well,
that's
yeah,
actually a crazy move. Like, I
it was.
kind of love it. It's very nervy of you. Like,
Well,
God forbid something goes wrong in your world.
No, I know. Yeah, it was a huge risk, but honestly, it paid off massive
The
because
faith that people would have in you would be huge.
that's it. Yeah, I said that I'd pay you back $500 a week after the 30 days if I didn't get
That
you
is
the images in
incredible.
time. And as you said, like it immediately built that trust. I was like, that's how confident I am.
Yeah.
There was a few wedding photographers here in Indy that made it on the news because they had just skipped town. And like there was this fear.
constant.
Yeah. And there was a lot of fear that this was going to continue to happen and you didn't know who to trust. And since
Yeah.
you don't hire a wedding photographer all the time, that's how I built trust with my clients. And it was really helpful.
That's a really great idea, honestly. That's a really, really I've never heard of anybody doing a guarantee, but it's such a phenomenal idea because I think trust is lower in our industry than ever before right now.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Because there are so many photographers skipping town. Mental health is a huge reason for it, I think, that they just get overwhelmed. Their businesses aren't sustainable. They freak out
Yep.
and they're like, screw it, I'm just not going to do any of this. But those are people's wedding photos. And like, there's good photographers in our area doing that still. Like, there's one guy in our town that has over 100 one-star reviews. He's just scamming
my
people, like straight up
gosh.
scamming people, but charging $7,500 for a wedding. So actually, I'm like intrigued. I'm really inspired by this. For the people that come to me and they do seem nervous, maybe I'll tell them, I'll give you a guarantee. Why wouldn't I? I will literally never be over.
Yeah, no, exactly. I
Interesting.
promise you it'll help. But the thing is that I would often get it to them within like 2 weeks. So
Right.
my guarantee was 30 days, but then I would make a promise, but then I would over deliver by
Right.
delivering it within 2 weeks. Is that still the same approach, or would your marketing be like, you're going to get it within 2 weeks, no matter what, to just set that up front? I mean, that's a personal question.
Yeah, I think I'm
Yeah.
going to say maximum of 4 instead of doing the 4 to 6 because truthfully, I think that leaves some ambiguity. And 4 to 6 is just what Taylor did. And I've just done it for 10 years. Truthfully, that's just like what I've done. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
4 to 6 just felt right. And I have delivered weddings sooner. And felt like, and this is where we never really know, but I felt like my clients didn't like their photos as much or they didn't value them as much. Or
Sure.
I started getting requests. Can you edit this? Can you do this? Because it's still too fresh in their minds.
Yeah.
So I would say I will say 4 weeks and I will probably I'll just deliver them within 3 would be my thought. I don't think I'll do 2.
That's a lot of pressure, especially with the volume of weddings and other
Yes, and the
shoots. Yeah.
volume of other shoots that I'm doing too. If I was just doing weddings, 2 weeks would be completely reasonable. But, if you throw one trip in there,
Oh, yeah.
you get sick. There has to be room for life to happen, right? And in this many years, I have seen how quickly life will throw me a curveball. And it's really hard to be editing from a bad mental state. Something's wrong with your family or whatever. And it's nice to give yourself a little bit of leg room. So yeah, I'll probably still tell them 4 weeks. And I'm going to keep that guaranteed delivery thing in mind for
Yeah.
the people that seem to be worried
On the
and
fence.
worried within reason because
Because it's happened. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And it's probably
Absolutely.
happened to one of their bridesmaids or something. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's bad how often it's happening. So, the one thing I will say to the photographers that are listening to this, the beginner photographers that are listening to this, get your systems in order for your workflow. Have a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be sexy. You don't have to spend a ton of money on a big CRM and all this stuff. I literally use a Google Sheets document to tell me what I have on the go, what's coming up, how much money it's making me. It's just like a very simple, basic spreadsheet. But then
Wow.
it also tells me when I shot it or when I'm going to be shooting it and its due date. And then I color code it with trackers of like, this one's green, it's in progress. This one's yellow, it's coming up on its due date. And red is like, this one is due, like you need to deliver this now. It's so simple, but something like that removes the guesswork out of what's coming up. It takes that huge weight off your shoulders of, oh my gosh, the editing is so overwhelming. If you are lucky enough to be in a position to have a lot of work where the editing might feel overwhelming, don't ghost your clients. Literally don't ghost your clients. There's photographers that will probably edit those weddings for free for you,
Yeah.
just so that you don't ruin the reputation of this whole industry. And I've done it. I've edited photos for people just so that their clients don't go and say,
Same.
this is happening in our city. Can you believe they're getting away with this? And yes, I can believe they're getting away with it. It's bad, but it keeps happening.
Yeah. I know. I know.
So I get that it's a mental health problem. I think it's mental health is like its own epidemic right now all over the world, but especially North America. And photographers are really heavily impacted by it. A lot of us don't have great health insurance and we're not taking good physical care of ourselves and mental care of ourselves. And then sometimes the train comes off the tracks. So don't let it be you.
The train comes off the tracks. It does sometimes. It does. So.
Yeah.
Well, Lindsay, we're definitely at the end of our time here. I appreciate you being so willing to share as much as you have today and being here. But for those who are listening right now and thinking, where can we find out more about Lindsay? Where can we find her course offerings? Where is the best place to find you online?
So Instagram, unfortunately, is probably the first go-to. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is L Coulter Photo, LCOULTER Photo. And from there, I have links to my website for weddings, families, babies, and all of that fun stuff if you want to check out my work. And then I do have a course. It's called Better Than Booked. It's betterthanbooked.com. So if you're a photographer that's like wanting to deep dive a little bit further into how to have a fun and sustainable and profitable business that focuses on not just the skill set, but also the mindset, that's kind of the place for you. It does have a wedding focus, but it's universal. All the tips in there.
Okay, here is one action item from today's interview with Lindsay Coulter that you can implement to help you become a better photographer. Now, this is also, life related, but Do a time audit on your photography. Whether photography is just a hobby or if it is developing into a business, discovering where your time is going can help you to see the things that, one, you don't actually love to do, but two, also realize what it is that you love most. When you figure out what it is that you love most, suddenly scaling back on those things that you love the least becomes a whole lot easier. And also, this is important, recognize where you're at in your photography journey as well. You know, if you're new, like you just started this last week, your priorities are not to learn everything all at once. It should be to just familiarize yourself with your camera. Spend the most amount of time on that by doing things like photo walks. Now, if you've been doing it for a year or two, well, then you should be focusing on things like light or composition, and that should determine where you spend your time. In the beginning, spending 1 hour dedicated to learning something, like going deep into it, learning something like light or composition, will teach you more in that 1 hour than 6 10-minute sessions over the course of a month or two. So focus on one thing. I want to know, what are you going to be spending your time doing, and what are you going to spend less time on? Let us know in the free and incredibly supportive Beginner Photography Podcast community, which you can join right now by heading over to beginnerphotopod.com/group. I hope to see you there. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Start a conversation. Grow together. That is it for this week. Remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.